My advice to everybody is always, number one, if you're hurt, go to a doctor. You should be taking care of yourself first to make sure that there's not something more serious. I lost control. I wasn't paying attention. I struck something and now I'm hurt. Call us. Let's talk about it. What are your complaints? What happened? When you contact a law firm, you should be asking who's going to be actually handling my case. They will only do so much on your case. What lawyers do from marketing over the last several years has changed. I think there is a benefit to marketing. When I was growing up, I think there was a big disdain, look down on anybody who was going to kind of advertise. I changed my perception of that over the years. I think it's very important. I think it's something that's needed now more than it was years ago. This is who we are. This is what we do. We're an option for you. Hi, I'm Tom Morgan Jr. And in this episode of Trial and Error, I'm going to talk with my dad a little bit about legal marketing in general and how that affects law firms and the general public.
Okay, you're in an automobile accident or a slip and fall. How does that person, or when does that person need to call an attorney? Or how do they know they need to call an attorney? Or what should they do? They get up, you slip and fall be it a grocery store or the sidewalk someplace or crossing the street, and you inevitably pick yourself up and manage to get home. And then the next day you start having problems and it gets worse a few days later. What should you have done something before it ever got to that stage, or can you still do something 3 or 4 days later? What advice can you give people as to what to do in those situations?
Well, my advice to everybody is always, number one, if you're hurt, go to a doctor. You don't delay in seeing a medical physician or a doctor. If it's about going to the ER or anything else, you should be taking care of yourself first to make sure that there's not something more serious. And if it is serious, that you're getting treatment.
Well, that's always simple when it's a major car crash and the ambulance takes you to the hospital.
Right.
But frequently we get hurt and we're able to maneuver, or right. Something. Well, my arm still works, and then it's 4 days later. Gee, it really, really hurts. And then you go to the doctors and you find out actually that it's either broken or there's a torn ligament. Because I didn't go to the doctor the same day, am I going to be barred? Did I do something?
No, and that's a common thing as well. Most people try to, shake it off. They make it through the fender bender. They don't feel like I don't want to go spend the time at an ER. I hit my head, I'll be fine. But maybe a day or two later, they're starting to have aches and pains, or maybe they're getting dizzy. At that stage, we always say, call us. Call us. Let's talk about it. Let's. What are your complaints? What happened? We'll kind of give you at least some evaluation as to whether we think you have a claim there against somebody else, if somebody else is, you believe, at fault. And we can do that evaluation. And then we can work with you in regards to whether you're going to go see your own treating doctor. If you need to be seen by a specialist or so forth, we can help you find those people. So in that instance, we say, if you're in a situation where you don't need immediate care and attention, or you've already seen your doctor, reach out to us.
Okay. And when they do that, at the same time, you can make the determination as a lawyer as to whether there's evidence that needs to be either preserved or investigated or something of that nature, correct?
Yeah, 100%. The person who, calls us and says, hey, I lost control, or I wasn't paying attention and my car went off the road a little bit and I struck something and now I'm hurt. We're going to tell that individual, listen, go see a doctor, but there's really nothing we're going to be able to do for you. You're the person at fault. There's nobody else involved. The person who is sitting in traffic, gets rear-ended, doesn't feel like they want to go see a doctor, but a couple of days later is starting to have those aches, those pains, maybe having some dizziness. That person, we're going to say, listen, you've been rear-ended. There's somebody else at fault. You don't know if there's an ability to recover anything because you don't know the other person at fault, their information and so forth, but we can go gather that. In the meantime, we can help you find treatment with a doctor, make sure you're being evaluated by somebody so that if it's a serious injury, it's being looked at and seen. And then our investigators will go figure out, getting the police report, finding insurance information, things of that nature.
Seeing if there's building cameras that might have preserved evidence of the accident or
Right.
traffic cams,
Exactly.
all those things. Well, that's, I just wanted to, well, that's really kind of a large topic that we probably should come back to on another occasion when we have a chance to chat. There was something that I did want to ask you about, and that was Morgan Law Group advertises.
Yeah.
What is the perception that the public has or should have of the law firms when they view the advertising? And what is the message that you as the advertiser are trying to get across to the public? And is there misleading information that's taking place in the lawyer ads, or can the public rely on what's said in those ads?
Well, that's a good question, because clearly what lawyers do from marketing over the last several years has changed. It's become there's social media now. There's things going on, but just taking, for instance, what you see on TV from many lawyers. Florida is very strict in regards to sort of what's allowed and not allowed within those ads, but doesn't mean that the message that's coming across is really true to what people perceive it to be. It used to be all these ads that, if you're in an accident, you can get up to $10,000 and all this stuff. But the reality was, it wasn't $10,000 to you as an individual. It was $10,000 going to your medical care provider. So people were racing to think that they're going to go get a $10,000 check from somebody if they're in an accident. And that was the intention of the message. The message was to entice people to that, right? Our messaging right now, we've clearly changed our ads recently. We've morphed into sort of a different kind of a theme and message. And I think for our firm, I didn't want the, hey, I'm your lawyer, come hire me,
Right.
sort of message, because I feel like there's so many that are just that kind of generic messaging that we just get mixed into it. And so I'm not out there competing, with the other Morgan. But what we are doing is trying to send that message that, hey, we've been very successful over the years. We've been in business for many years. And so you can come to rely on us that if you hire us to manage your case, we've been doing this for a while. You're going to get experienced lawyers. You're going to get good results. And we have proven track record of showing that. And so the messaging that we're trying to get across in sort of a casual and fun manner was that.
I was just about to say, advertising is expensive. So there has to be some sort of a line between being catchy and entertaining and providing the message, or should they all be just an informational type of advertising where you tell them who the law firm is, what they do, and thank you very much?
Well, look, there's a lot of law firms that do that, just standard. We are ABC law firm. We do auto accidents, or we do slip and falls, and we just got a verdict for X. And that's the other thing. You drive down the highway anywhere, and I don't care what state you're in, you're going to see billboards from lawyers. And majority of the time, a lot of those are going to have next to them some sort of an amount that was recovered.
Right.
And
yes.
The reality, though, is for most of those ads or billboards, they may say, we got $1 million verdict, and it has some client's picture. The actual result of what the client gets for that $1 million per se is not that. You've got to remember, out of that is the lawyer fees, and there may have been a lot of costs, and there may have been other things that come into play. So what the client ends up with at the end of the day is going to be something much less than that. But the messaging clearly doesn't express it that way.
When you see these advertisements, can you rely on the fact that that law firm is going to do what they're advertising versus soliciting clients and sending that case on to other lawyers at different law firms to handle?
You don't. Those are the questions. When you contact a law firm, you should be asking, who's going to be actually handling my case? Are you the lawyers that are going to be representing me? Or are you going to be bringing in a different lawyer? Or are you going to be asking me to go out and see a different law firm that is associated with you? We do co-counseling with other law firms in other states where we don't have offices. But where we have offices, our firm handles. We handle from the inception through a trial. But that is not every
So
firm.
when they call you, the file's going to stay with you. But even when you associate with, because the case happens to be in a jurisdiction where you don't normally practice, you still are involved in the case, aren't you?
100%. We're co-counseling. We're bringing in another law firm because they're licensed in that market. They know the court system, but we generally are coming in because we're better skilled and have the knowledge of regards to how to proceed with the claim. And it's more common in the property than it is for the personal injury. But when you hire a firm, anybody, for any type of matter, you should be asking that question. Clearly in the personal injury world, it's more common than in other areas of practice that people get farmed out. A firm will be, they will only do so much on your case, and then they want to send it to a different lawyer to handle the rest.
If it gets, okay. Overall, is advertising a benefit to the public, or is there a benefit to the lawyer because they have the opportunity to generate a lot of clients? I mean, advertising that we see on TV isn't to benefit the public, it's to get the public to buy more of whatever they're selling, okay?
Well, I think there is a benefit to marketing. I changed my perception of that over the years. I think when you were practicing and I was growing up, I think there was a big disdain, look down on anybody who was going to kind of advertise. And there wasn't a lot of
Right.
people
Well,
advertising.
when I started, there was no advertising at all.
Right. So I think over the last few years, I always had the perception, why do I advertise? I would go out and market and do things for the firm in the community and go to events and so forth where we could introduce people to us and meet other people. But straight marketing such as TV or radio or things like that nature, I didn't really partake in. But a couple of things have changed. Number one is people in general are looking for quick access, quick information intake. The internet is there. They want to Google something, they want to know. And so if you have been promoting yourself on TV or radio, when they go and they do that search and they see your name, they can associate with the fact, I've heard that who that person is. They can have more likely that they feel more comfortable hiring someone that they've heard something about. They've heard the results over the radio or seen on TV. But I think it is also informational to say, this is what your choices are. This is what your availability is versus the old days of opening Yellow Pages and having 2,000 listed lawyers, and you had no idea what the difference was.
I was just about to say that initially the advertising was, somebody, as I call it, the chest beating of they're the greatest lawyer and they got this kind of money and moved on. And it was to solicit clients. It was to solicit as many files as they could possibly open, and they would send the files then, keep some, send some to other lawyers who would work them up and settle them or try them or whatever the case may be. But they were the inflow. And then companies came along that would advertise, and then lawyers would join that informational group.
Right.
And they would farm them out based on zip codes, okay? So you could buy a couple of zip codes from a company, and they would do large-scale advertising. Say they advertised all of Dade County, and you might buy 3 or 4 zip codes. So you would get all of the cases that came in for people living, say, in Coconut Grove or Coral Gables, or somebody wanted all the cases from West Kendall. Or now it seems to have changed, and it's more the law firm advertising. Of course, everybody's inundated with all up and down the East Coast with Morgan and Morgan, and they do predominantly personal injury, but they're enormous as far as the number of lawyers that they have in the places that they are. But that's kind of a whole different animal and a different kind of advertising.
But that goes back to why we're Mike. So, right now, Morgan and Morgan is clearly they are the largest plaintiff firm out there, and they are also the biggest spender of advertising and marketing around the country. So if
they're like the Marlboro Man of advertising.
Right. But if we're not doing something to market ourselves and letting people know that we exist, how are they going to find us? How do they know that we do property claims versus, ABC law firm?
Probate, yeah.
Right. So putting something out there to say, this is who we are, this is what we do, we're an option for you, I think is very important. I think it's something that's needed now more than it was years ago. And it's also the way people are ingesting information, whether it's through social media or just TV. Things are done much quicker, smaller snippets. And so you need to sort of impose upon them that little bit of information as much as you can in a small amount of time.
It strikes me that it's become essential to advertise in some form. Everybody doesn't have to advertise on TV, but they somehow have to make themselves available or advertise on the internet, because everybody is on the internet and expects to get a lot of information about anybody that they're going to hire, be it a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, a chiropractor, a repair shop. Everybody goes to the internet and checks up on them. And
everybody.
That to me is now essential, and therefore to put out information about the firm is almost a requirement. And also the type of claims that you're going to be dealing with, people don't expect to have damage to their house and don't expect to be suffering from a hurricane. And it's after the damage has occurred that all of a sudden they think or they realize that they need an attorney, and it's too late. The TV doesn't work, so they can't turn it on and wait for the 11 o'clock news to get a lawyer's ad. But the internet will be working, so they can go someplace and learn about who's going to handle hurricane claims, who's going to handle a water claim, who's going to handle a property claim, and you can provide the information that they're going to find that they need to make certain decisions for their recovery.
Right, 100%. I mean, a lot of the stuff we do, we're advertising and marketing for the personal injury aspect of the firm as much as we are for the property claim aspects. But on the property side, you're right. A lot of what we're marketing hurricane damage recoveries when it's not hurricane season. And people, well, why? Well, because I want them to remember that this is what we do. Because like you said, when the hurricane does happen, they may be days or weeks without power or availability or doing other things. And so making them aware in advance.
I think, obviously, cleverness is always cute in advertising, but sometimes I think it's very informative to the public. There's in South Carolina, as an example, there's a lawyer that does personal injury, and for a long time he ran ads about, well, I know that you're not injured now and you haven't been in an accident, but take my phone number, put it in your phone, because if you need it, you're probably going to need it on short notice, and it'll be there so you can call us, because this is what we do. And I thought that was something that people would do. It takes nothing to put another phone number, with somebody's name and say, You put it on accident lawyer and a phone number. And if you do have an accident next week, year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, wow, there's a phone number. I can call up right away. Maybe I'll like what they have to say. Maybe I won't, but it gives you a place to start with.
Right.
So I've over the years have changed my attitude toward advertising, which was a no-no when we came out. You didn't speak of that, and you had to be careful about referrals from other lawyers, to now it's a business unto itself. I don't like that aspect where the advertising is its own separate business and it's generating files for the sake of having a claim come through the door, and it's getting sent to other law firms or people with no understanding of the claim or handling it just to get a quick settlement. There's still some of that going on. That part of it I don't like, but I think that that's getting less each year, or I hope it is.
Well, I think you're always going to have some aspect of it, because there's going to be the firms that are strictly business and not really law, right? And then you also have the other dynamic of the people, the firms that are, we are lawyers, we don't market, we don't advertise, and they're doing smaller amounts of cases, but they feel vindicated that what they're doing is they're doing it without the marketing or the need to do those things because they believe it's below them. I don't know. There isn't a right answer, I don't think, but I do see the advantageous aspect of trying to make people, we're in various markets, letting people know that we're in that market. Please look at our past record. We may be new to your market, but the people that are there are, like in my Tennessee office, those are local lawyers. They're not people I've shipped up there from Miami, but people initially may say, oh, that firm is out of Miami, or, just like they do with some other firms. But they're going to look, and I say, look at the history of what we've done. We know this area of business. Who else does when it comes to property? There aren't that many. So, we're bringing a skill level into the market. And so we want to educate the public that we're in your market. This is what we do. We do some of the stuff that some of the other lawyers do, but we also do some other stuff that they don't. And that's what makes us, different from them.
I was just about to ask you about being in so many different states. First of all, the laws are different. Can you really just train and then transport Miami lawyers to Tennessee, to California, to Colorado, to Louisiana, where you're not sure whether they're going to speak English or French when you get into the courthouse? Or do you impart the training and knowledge of how to handle this aspect of the law to lawyers who live in that area and know the jurisdiction?
No, we're hiring lawyers in those markets that understand that market. What we're bringing to them is the resources and the past knowledge and experience of handling these type of cases, so that they not only, if they've done it before, they now can do it on a grander scale. They can do it more efficiently. They have the trained staff that know how to process these claims so that they're not bogged down doing it. Because even the lawyers, especially for the property, the lawyers that may have done this with other firms have generally done it in very small volume or numbers. They're not a firm that has had staff that's trained in the process, not understanding what the differences of different claims are and understanding the policies that come into play. So when you as a lawyer are trying to do this market, having a support staff that understands what that market is as well is only going to make you more proficient and a better ability to provide the service to the client.
So somebody who's down here on vacation and sees your ad and they go on home back to Tennessee, and then they have a claim in their home and they say, oh, well, there's no point calling Morgan Law Group. They're not going to schlep a lawyer all the way from Miami up to Knoxville to handle my claim. Because you have an office in Tennessee or in Knoxville or wherever the case, you have lawyers who are familiar with Tennessee law, and have the training and knowledge and skill about property claims in that area. You're not putting somebody on a train with baggage and boxes to go from Miami to
No,
Tennessee to
no.
handle the claim.
What I say to people when we're in these different markets is we have the skilled lawyer. What we're providing as skilled lawyer is skilled support staff that knows this area of practice, as well as we have the network of experts and other individuals and companies that provide the services to help you put your claim together. So we've got the network of engineers. I've got roofers. I've got contractors. I've got mitigation companies that we work with on a national level or in certain regions. And so we go into the market, we have those relationships. We know we can provide that service to assist our clients on a mass scale. And so whether it's a handful of homes or as a result of a large event, we have the ability to bring in other individuals from around the country that don't necessarily need to know those laws. They're providing services. So we have that network. We have those relationships already. They work with us, and we'll move them into those areas.
So as much as there's a certain particular, we'll use Tennessee for just as a far enough away state, that has its own little niche, but yet somebody that has damage to their roof, a roof damage there in many respects is going to be similar to a roof damage in Miami. And so an expert, though, who might testify in Miami, can testify about the roof damage and what needs to be done and what caused it and what repairs are needed and what the costs are in Tennessee as easily as he can in Miami, even though you need your lawyers in Tennessee to handle and try the case because the local people who are going to be sitting on the jury, the local laws, the judges and the other lawyers who operate in that area.
Right. So
there's
it's
two
real
things
easy.
going on.
There's two components. Number one is the lawyer is there because you have the interpretation of the policy and the law there of how it gets applied, right?
So that's going to be governed by lawyers who are familiar with Tennessee law, not necessarily Florida law.
100%.
Okay.
So they're, but they need the person to say, what is the claim? How is the claim made up? Most of the people we work with are licensed in multiple states, if not in every state. So engineering companies and so forth. If I bring in a roofer, their contractor, they're going to be licensed in that state. So they understand what the building codes are, what the requirements are on the structures. They're also going to understand the differences. Down here in South Florida, tile roofs are the most common thing. You go into other states, there's
You don't
shingle.
see tile. Yeah, just what
It's
you say.
shingle.
If you get too far north of Orlando, you don't see a tile
Right.
tile roof
And then you
anywhere.
get into the central states and you see a lot of slate. So, the building structures, the manner in which things are built for the different weather environments and so forth changes. South Florida, we're not putting, weatherproofing insulation in, because of cold and snow. We don't get it. You go up to Nashville and homes are being built and they're putting this insulation in that's required for
So that's where the
heating
local
requirements.
lawyers that were familiar with that area are helpful. But the expert,
But the expert
he knows
is what's
it all.
going to be
Correct.
right.
Okay. I mean, because I was laughing to
They're
myself.
gonna come in. They're gonna say, we understand the building code here requires that you have this. You have 2-ply or you have 3-inch nails or whatever it is. So they're going to help us, and those are the people we're bringing with us in various aspects of the country. I mean, I've got certain people that are Florida only, but we've got others that work with us in multiple states.
I saw an ad just the other day up in South Carolina, and I was sort of laughing because they were talking about how to rejuvenate an asbestos roof. And because I'm so used to all the tile roofs down here, I was thinking to myself, who's got an old asbestos roof there? Sure, they still put asbestos on the roofs all the time. And apparently there's a spray. I mean, it's more than a spray, but it effectively is nothing more than a spray on the roof to rejuvenate it and restore it to almost new, gives it extra 5 or 10 years of life that it didn't have. And now it's being underwritten by some serious national organizations that are sponsoring it for their members.
So
interesting.
that's a new That's a interesting thing because a lot of flat roofs that's being marketed down here as well for flat roofs, which you see on a lot of condo buildings or warehouses and commercial
Yes.
structures. And the question is, if the life expectancy is kind of at its end on those roofs, is adding that element to it, which is going to be an extension, should that be covered or not covered by your policy if you're affected later on? If, you know, did you really put a new roof on or did you sort of patch it, right? And so it's sort of a new product that's being pushed out there, and there's kind of some argument as to sort of
I could
how
see.
that's going to come
Yeah,
into play.
yeah, I was thinking initially that it was very clever, and then I did a little reading on it, and saw how it's really being marketed as practically putting on a new roof. Either it will work or it won't, and if it does work, wow, it's like having a whole new roof. I can now see how that could have some policy interpretations on that good old insurance policy with all those other complications, as if we didn't have enough complications before we got to this.
Right.
So, okay, so let me bring up another area since we sort of got there and backed off. Obviously, only a limited number of cases actually ever go all the way to trial. Okay. Along the way, though, you get to a point where you're thinking about trial. You may even start the preparation for trial, and you come up with ideas for trial. Do situations occur where you have an idea as to what the theory of the case should or ought to be, and how it ought to be presented so that it can be viewed and accepted by the jury, and your client has a